June 12, 2025. It's a date now seared into India's collective memory. An Air India Boeing 787 Dreamliner, flight AI 171, heading for London, lifts off from Ahmedabad. Just minutes later, a mayday call cuts through the airwaves, then an unnerving silence, and then horror. The aircraft, with 242 people on board, plummets into a residential area. It narrowly missed a school, but slammed into a hostel for medical students. 241 lives, gone in an instant. One survivor, just one. This catastrophe immediately sent shockwaves across the nation and the globe, raising an urgent, terrifying question. Was this India's deadliest plane crash ever? The answer isn't simple, and the truth, as we're about to find out, is more horrifying than numbers alone can ever show. We're going to look at what happened in the Ahmedabad disaster, compare it to the darkest moments in India's aviation history, and try to understand what truly makes an air crash the ultimate nightmare. The scene right after the AI-171 crash was pure chaos and devastation. Eyewitness videos, popping up online almost immediately, showed the Boeing 787 flying dangerously low, its engines screaming, before it took a final, sickening plunge. A massive explosion lit up the morning sky. Rescue teams scrambled, fighting fierce fires, and the twisted wreckage spread across a crowded urban neighborhood. Finding a lone survivor, Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, who was in seat 11A, felt like a tiny spark of impossible hope in all that tragedy. He was hospitalized with multiple severe injuries, and his miraculous survival really underscored the sheer scale of the loss. Everyone else, all 241 passengers and crew, were lost. The plane itself, a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, was known as a highly advanced piece of aviation technology. This crash was the first fatal one for this specific aircraft type anywhere in the world, which just added to the shock and disbelief. How could such a modern plane, on a routine flight, meet such a terrible end so close to the airport? Investigators from India's Directorate General of Civil Aviation, along with international observers from Boeing and the US National Transportation Safety Board, all headed to Ahmedabad. They had a huge task ahead: sift through the debris, find those crucial black boxes, the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder, and piece together the final, terrifying moments of AI-171. The pilot's mayday call was a key starting point. It told them there was an emergency, but what kind? And why didn't the crew respond to any more calls from air traffic control? That sudden total silence suggested something happened very fast, something that might have completely overwhelmed the experienced flight crew. As always in these situations, theories started flying around. Was it a massive mechanical failure, a sudden loss of control, or maybe something even worse? The fact that it happened so soon after takeoff pointed to possible engine failure, problems with the flight controls, or maybe even something breaking apart within the plane's structure. Crashing into a residential area, hitting that student hostel, just magnified the tragedy. It brought the horror right into an urban landscape and showed the huge risks when planes and populated areas are so close. The nation held its breath, waiting for answers, while the grim work of identifying victims went on. The pressure on investigators was immense, not just to find the cause, but to reassure everyone that this kind of thing could be prevented from happening again. As the investigation into Air India Flight AI-171 moved forward, the recovered black boxes began to paint a truly harrowing picture of the aircraft's final minutes. The full official report would likely take many months, maybe even years, to compile and release. But preliminary findings, pieced together from the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, started to point towards a rapid series of critical system failures. The CVR confirmed the mayday call came from the captain. His voice was strained but professional as he reported an uncontrollable fire in the forward cargo hold. Right after that, alarms started blaring in the cockpit, smoke detection, then master caution warnings for multiple electrical system failures. The data showed that within seconds of the mayday, key flight control systems began to fail. The crew fought hard, trying to isolate the fire and keep control of the crippled Dreamliner. Their exchanges, captured on the CVR, reveal a desperate battle against a situation that was falling apart incredibly quickly. What seems to have happened, based on this early data, is that the fire started because of undeclared hazardous material in the cargo. It spread with terrifying speed, taking out vital wiring and control systems that ran beneath the cockpit and passenger cabin. That silence after the mayday. It was likely because the fire quickly knocked out the communication systems, or even more tragically, the crew was overcome by smoke and fumes while they were still fighting to keep the plane in the air and turn back to the airport. So, the crash into the residential area wasn't just a random impact point. It was the tragic end for a flight crew battling an impossible inferno that crippled their aircraft in just minutes. This wasn't a simple mechanical problem with the Dreamliner itself. It was a catastrophic event kicked off by dangerous goods. It's a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities that still exist, even with today's advanced aircraft technology. The horror wasn't just in the numbers lost, but in the terrifying speed and nature of the emergency, giving the crew almost no chance to prevent disaster. The investigation then shifted its focus heavily onto the cargo manifest, pre-flight screening, and exactly what kind of hazardous materials sparked that uncontrollable blaze. The Ahmedabad truth was shaping up to be a story of a modern aircraft brought down by a failure in the safety chain regarding what it was carrying. The sheer scale of the Ahmedabad disaster, with 241 fatalities, immediately brought back memories of India's darkest aviation moments. To really understand if Ahmedabad is the nation's ultimate aviation nightmare, we have to look back. And any talk like this will always lead to November 12, 1996, the day of the Charkhi Dadri mid-air collision. Over the skies of Haryana, near the village of Charkhi Dadri, a Saudi Arabian Airlines Boeing 747 on its way to Delhi collided with a Kazakhstan Airlines Ilyushin Il-76 cargo plane that had just taken off. There were no survivors. All 312 people on the Saudia flight and all 37 on the Kazakh plane were lost, a total of 349 souls. It's still the deadliest aviation accident in Indian history and the world's deadliest mid-air collision. The Charkhi Dadri investigation uncovered a tragic series of events caused by communication failures and pilot error. The Kazakh aircraft was told to descend to 15,000 feet, but it kept going down to 14,000 feet and was still descending when it hit the Saudia 747, which was flying steady at its assigned 14,000 feet in the opposite direction. A critical point in the investigation was the Kazakh pilot's poor English skills and his misunderstanding of air traffic control instructions. Back then, Indian airspace, like many parts of the world, wasn't as strictly organized with separate air corridors for arrivals and departures. Plus, neither plane had a traffic collision avoidance system, or TCS, which could have given a last-minute warning. The impact of Charkhi Dadri was huge. It exposed serious weaknesses in India's air traffic control systems. That disaster led to major reforms, like making airborne collision avoidance systems, ACAS, mandatory for all aircraft in Indian airspace, and big improvements in air traffic controller training and how airspace was managed. The memory of those 349 lives lost was a brutal lesson, a horrific benchmark for future safety. The images of wreckage scattered across fields, the sheer number of victims from two massive planes, left a deep scar. While Ahmedabad's AI-171 was a single-plane tragedy, the ghost of Charkhi Dadri looms large, a constant reminder of what can happen when multiple things go wrong in the complex dance of aviation. While Charkhi Dadri holds the grim title of India's deadliest air disaster because of the combined loss from two planes, the nation has seen other devastating single-aircraft crashes that echo the tragedy of Ahmedabad. One of the most well-known is Air India Flight 855. On New Year's Day, January 1, 1978, an Air India Boeing 747 named Emperor Ashoka took off from Mumbai headed for Dubai. Just minutes after departure, the aircraft banked sharply left and plunged into the Arabian Sea. All 213 passengers and crew on board died. For almost 20 years, until Charkhi Dadri, this was India's deadliest air crash. The investigation figured the probable cause was the captain's spatial disorientation after his attitude director indicator failed. Basically, in the darkness over the sea, with a failing instrument, the pilot lost track of the plane's actual orientation, leading to the fatal dive. It was a chilling example of how human perception, without reliable instruments, can tragically fool even experienced pilots. The decades that followed saw other serious crashes that still shook the nation and highlighted ongoing safety worries. On May 22, 2010, Air India Express Flight 812, a Boeing 737, overshot the tabletop runway at Mangalore International Airport while landing. The aircraft fell into a gorge and burst into flames, killing 158 of the 166 people on board. Pilot error during a critical landing phase was named as the main cause. More recently, on August 7, 2020, another Air India Express Boeing 737, Flight 1344, on a repatriation flight during the COVID-19 pandemic, skidded off a wet runway in heavy rain at Calicut International Airport. The plane broke into several pieces after falling into a ravine. This accident led to 21 deaths, including both pilots, and many injuries. Like Mangalore, this crash again highlighted the unique challenges of flying into airports with tabletop runways, especially in bad weather. Each of these disasters added to the story of aviation risk in India. They all led to investigations, reports, and recommendations aimed at stopping them from happening again. They also serve as grim reference points when a new tragedy, like Ahmedabad, strikes, making us ask what lessons were learned and if enough has really been done. So was the 2025 Ahmedabad crash India's deadliest ever? Well, if we're just looking at the raw numbers from a single event, Charkhi Dadri, with its 349 deaths from two colliding aircraft, is still the absolute deadliest aviation event in Indian airspace. Air India Flight 855 took 213 lives back in 1978. The Ahmedabad crash of Air India Flight AI-171, with at least 241 confirmed deaths, tragically surpasses Flight 855. This makes it the deadliest single aircraft crash in India in over 4 decades, and the second deadliest overall, right after Charkhi Dadri. But the horrifying reality of a plane crash often goes deeper than just a ranking by death toll. The Ahmedabad crash has its own unique kind of terror. First, it involved a state-of-the-art Boeing 787 Dreamliner, a plane many people see as the height of modern aviation safety. For it to fail so catastrophically, and for this to be the first fatal crash for this model, sends a particularly chilling message. Risk is always there, no matter how good the technology gets. Second, the crash happened in a densely populated urban area. The plane tore into a hostel for medical students. While the loss of life on board was immense, it was terrifyingly close to being an even bigger catastrophe on the ground. This closeness to everyday life, this violation of what we think of as a safe space on the ground, adds a different kind of horror compared to crashes over the sea or in remote areas. Third, having a sole survivor, Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, while a miracle, also starkly highlights the fate of the other 241. His story, once he's able to tell it, will give us a human perspective of unimaginable trauma, a living testament to those final terrifying moments aboard AI-171. This single voice, emerging from the silence, makes the loss of the others feel even more painful. And the preliminary findings that suggest a rapidly spreading fire started by hazardous cargo add another layer to the horror. It points not just to a mechanical issue, but a potential breakdown in the safety chain long before the plane even left the ground, a failure in screening, declaration, or handling of dangerous goods. This kind of cause often makes the public deeply worried about the unseen risks that might be part of air travel. So, the Ahmedabad disaster, while not taking more lives than Charkhi Dadri, arguably presents a more modern, urban, and perhaps more relatable nightmare for people today. Reports suggest it has revived memories of past tragedies and sparked renewed, intense scrutiny of aviation safety rules in India. The horrifying reality is that even with decades of learning and amazing technological advances, the potential for a catastrophic failure, for a chain of events leading to mass casualties, is still with us. It's a reminder that being watchful, strictly following safety standards, and constantly trying to improve aren't just bureaucratic chores. They're the only things standing between us and such nightmares. The story of aviation is one of incredible achievement, but it's also filled with profound tragedy. Each incident, like Ahmedabad, Charkhi Dadri, and Air India 855, carries lessons paid for at the highest price. If you find these explorations of aviation history and safety important, please hit that like button and think about subscribing to the channel for more content like this. And we really want to hear from you. What incidents in India or anywhere in the world do you think we should take a closer look at? Let us know in the comments below. The investigation into Air India Flight AI 171, the Ahmedabad disaster of June 2025, will go on for many months. The full and final causes will eventually be laid out in an official report, hopefully leading to changes that will stop such a tragedy from ever happening again. What's already tragically clear is that this crash, with its 241 fatalities, is one of the worst in India's aviation history, the deadliest involving a single aircraft in over 45 years, and the very first fatal incident for the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. While the 1996 Charkhi Dadri mid-air collision remains the deadliest event overall on Indian soil, the Ahmedabad crash has delivered a fresh and profound shock. It's a stark and horrifying reminder that the pursuit of aviation safety is a relentless, ongoing journey, not a final destination. The loss of 241 lives, the trauma for the sole survivor, and the impact on the families and the nation are just immeasurable. Each name, each story cut short, drives home the human cost when things go catastrophically wrong in the skies. The truth of Ahmedabad, as it fully comes out, will be added to the somber records of aviation history, a testament to the forces involved and a crucial lesson for the future of flight. For now, it's a tragedy that has left an indelible mark on India, a horrifying reality that demands reflection and an unwavering commitment to making the skies safer for everyone.